going to call this work session of the Anchorage Assembly on ML&P rate increase, and start with introductions, and we can work around that way. You go ahead.
I'll start. Mike Abbott, City Manager.
Mark Johnston, ML&P.
Anna Henderson, ML&P.
Maybe they're going that way.
Grace
You're next, so we'll get the audience.
John Middleton.
Pete Peterson.
That'll be Greg Jackson. Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say that Ms. Dombrowski and Mr. Dunbar called to say they wouldn't be able to make the meeting today.
Thank you.
Dick Train Assembly.
Tim Steele, Assembly.
Patrick Floyd.
Chris Judy, Office of Economic and Community Development.
Tom Graff, Citizen.
Brady, Commissioner, ML&P.
You're next.
Grace Clemens.
In the back.
Assembly Beth Julie Harris, Jeremy, Larry Earl, ML&P. Laura Peterson, ML&P.
And our two new people that just came in.
Suzanne Flippery, Mayor's Office. Ona Rath, Mayor's Office.
As I said, the topic is the ML&P rate increase, and since it's a work session, I guess we'll have the presentation and we'll chat about it.
So, Mr. Chairman, maybe I can sort of set the stage for this.
Sounds good.
On Tuesday, December 6th, we plan to introduce the ordinance via the regular agenda for Assembly approval for the rate increase we're going to describe to you today. We're going to ask that the Assembly set the public hearing and take action on December 20th. Because we're sort of entering the holiday season, and because we know there may be Assembly questions or discussion about this, we didn't want to wait until after introduction to begin explaining our situation to you. We wanted, because it is very important that the Assembly take action on the 20th. So to make it possible for the Assembly to have multiple conversations in advance of the 20th, we're starting pre-introduction, for want of a better term, and we appreciate folks taking time out of a short week to spend an hour with us today so we can start this conversation. And we're fully aware that there may be follow-up conversations required before the 20th, and we're available for that in smaller groups or larger groups, committees or full bodies. So that is why we're sort of ahead of time. We didn't want to wait until the typical Friday before the public hearing work session opportunity in case our initial presentation led to a request for more information. So
is the schedule for RCA?
Our plan is, presuming Assembly support on the 20th, that this will be presented to the RCA between the 20th and the 31st. And we'll be able to, you'll hear today about why that timing is important.
Any questions for Mr. Graham? You're on.
Okay. A few opening comments before we get into the presentation. We recognize that rate increases create hardships on some of our customers, and that nobody wants to pay more. But our customers, especially within our service territory, rely on electricity for a number of things. Some of them heat their homes with electricity. A large number of them, their water heaters are electric. All of their appliances are electric. And as you will see in some of the comments on our Facebook page, businesses operate because they have electricity. So what they want is when they flip that switch, that the power comes on. And what you need for that is reliability. What we did with this plant and over the last 14 years is took a long view approach to what we would need. We looked at what we had for generating resources, how long we expected that those would last, what we would need going into the future. And we started in 2002 with an integrated resource plan. We did one in 2002, 2004, 2006, 2009, and then updated in 2009 and 2012. As part of that process, SPP came out of that process. But then we also knew that we needed more, that SPP was not going to be enough. So the message that I would hope that we could make clear is that the generation that we have is old. And to give you some perspective on that, well, actually, these are some of the comments from our customers, and you have it in there, so I'm not going to go through them, but you see that we've got some that say that their power's out, their house is getting cold. We've got comments from businesses, and these are just from a couple of the outages. Some of these outages were 30 to 45 minutes, and we had people that were concerned. But to give you a perspective on the age of our equipment, because reliability is the thing that we think needs to be focused on. When our first unit was built, Johnny Carson, it was the first year that he hosted the Tonight Show. The second unit that was built, the Beatles made their first visit to the United States. Our Unit 4 that was built, 1971 was the year that unit was built, so it was the first anniversary of the Pinto. With Unit 5, we were beginning construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Units 6 and 7 came at a time when the Iran hostage crisis was going on, and our youngest unit, 1984, was the year that Forrest Dunbar was born. So basically, virtually all of the units that we have at plants 1 and 2, which are our major source of power, were built at a time prior to Forrest. When you look at our aging infrastructure, you see the black line across there. And actually, I brought it a little later. This black line, they have around a 35-year design life of the units. What you see there is that 65% of our generation is above that black line currently. Within 3 years, because of Unit 8, which is this one right here, 90% of our generation will be at or above that line. The only outlier is Unit 3, and that's because the original Unit 3 cratered and we had to go in and put in a new Unit 3, and that's the only reason that one's not at or above that line. So with aging generation, you get less efficiency, but you also get less reliability. We're going to go through a series of pictures here. This is Unit 7. This is one of the workhorse units of these are parts from Unit 7. One of the workhorse units that we have relied on for the last probably 10, 15 years to produce most of the power that the utility used. It was overhauled in 2012 at a cost of between $8 and $10 million. 3 years later, it was out of service for another 2 years for inspection and maintenance. This is Unit 8, and what this shows is that it's not just the unit itself that is the problem, it's the balance of plant, the stuff that supports that. These are actually glycol lines that help cool the unit, and those had to be dug up about a month ago because they had corroded to the point that they were leaking, and you see the hole in the one line there. This is Unit 5, which has been one that we have relied on over the last several years. In 2016, it was out of service for 3 to 4 months because of issues within the seals and the high temperature portion of the turbine. That is now available because we did frankly a Band-Aid fix to bring it back online, because we knew that with testing 2A that we may need to use this particular unit, but it is one of the units that we're looking to retire because of its age and frankly the performance. This is Unit 6, or portions of it. You see corroded water pump. We have issues with insulation. This unit actually has been out of service since August. We had done a number of fixes over the last several years to keep it online, and we say at ML&P the Dutch boy ran out of fingers to plug the holes in it, and so we finally put it out of service at the end of August. And because of that, units 7 and 8, which are currently providing most of our power, are running simple cycle, which means that they are running and they use a heck of a lot more gas to produce the same amount of electricity. So this walks us through a little bit of the studies that we've done. It was a result of the 2009 study that we moved with SPP. We updated it in 2012, and that was the basis for the 2A decision. What they identified in virtually all of these studies is that our biggest challenge was aging generation. If we wanted to be able to continue to provide the safe, reliable, and economic service, we needed new generation. Now, each of these integrated resource plans talked about a number of different options. And so that's where we got SPP, and we went into partnership with CEA. As we moved forward to look at 2A, we had the option of putting new units in our existing plants 1 and 2, but the issue was balance of plant, all of those things. So you can take and put a brand new unit into the building that's 40, 50 years old and have continuing problems, or you could tear the building down and rebuild the building with a new unit. The problem is that was the generation that was providing the power to our customers, and that really wasn't something that was an option. So as we moved forward with this, we had we worked collaboratively with the administration at the time, with the assembly, and with our management to identify what the solution was. We came up with doing 2A, and we initially were going to put it in a different location, but we decided to put it at or adjacent to Plant 2. And as a result of that decision, we get benefits such as the inlet air chilling that because of the water line that runs past there. We went to the assembly initially with the first, which was to hire IEC as the owner's engineer. They helped us to design the specs for the ITB. They helped us to evaluate the responses for that, and then they helped us select the ultimate contractor, which was Quanta. Throughout that process, they have continued on to actually hold Quanta's feet to the fire, and the product that we have is in large part due to IEC's involvement. Now, we started with $2 million. What I would tell you is that number is significantly higher, because as we've gone through the process and they have taken on additional duties, we've had to do change orders to that. In 2012, we came to the assembly for bonding authority to help finance the construction of the plant. When we brought forward the actual contract for Quanta in 2013, that was $200 million. The year before, we had actually bought the generators from GE. So these are the benefits that come about based on the decision to build 2A. We could have done other things. We could have actually not done anything. We could have continued to exist with the generation that we have. Would have been less reliable. At some point, it would have broken. We have done a fabulous job of maintaining it, but even spending $8 to $10 million every couple of years in order to overhaul them, as you noticed with the one slide, in 2012, we did the major overhaul. 3 years later, it was broken, and we had to go back in and fix it. As a result of 2A, we save, and this is in 2017 dollars, $8.4 million a year in fuel. It's significantly more fuel efficient than the plants that we have that are providing the power now. Over the 40-year life of that plant, it's $336 million that we as a utility will save over taking this option as opposed to continue with the existing plant that we have. The other thing that it gave us the opportunity to do is power pool. Now, as you have seen over the years, we sell power to a lot of utilities. And we have been able to do that because we have had very efficient generation. With the loss of Unit 6, our generation was not as efficient. And so we sold less power. We expect that the power pool will benefit our customers by $7 million. And the reason that we're able to do it is because of 2A. If you net what we have historically made, and that's looking back over the last 20 years, the $3 million that we made off of selling power to other people, it nets to $4 million as a result of being able to power pool and benefit not just ML&P customers, but MEA customers and Chugach customers. So all the citizens of Anchorage benefit from the decision to build 2A because we can now base load a very efficient unit, and that $4 million over the 40 years is $160 million that our customers save. For all of you that have been out to the plant and probably listened to Brett at AWU talk about the heat exchanger system that we are doing, that allows us to warm up the city's water from about 40 degrees up to 60 degrees. Kaufman Engineering did a study for AWU about a year and a half ago, I believe, and they went in and looked at a number of different factors and what that meant to the citizens of Anchorage. And they looked at the fact that 75% of the citizens use a gas water heater and 25% use an electric water heater, and all of the other factors that went into it. They estimated that it will save about $2 million a year as a result of that heat exchanger. The residents of Anchorage, 52,000 and change, 52,000, about actually 56,000 customers of AWU will benefit from this. And now those are residential customers as well as business customers. They broke that $2 million down. About 3/4 of the $2 million goes to residential customers and 1/4 of it goes to business customers. That savings is for those customers for the life of the plant. And again, all of these numbers are based on 2017. As we move into the future and the potential for gas costs going up, these numbers will actually increase. One of the things that we are going to ask of the RCA is that they allow us to do rate stabilization. This graph is for illustrative purposes only. And what it shows is how you collect just the cost of Plant 2A. So depreciation and return just on the plant. As you can see with the traditional rate making model, the number is higher and then it declines over time. With the rate stabilization, it starts lower and then it increases. What you are doing is deferring the revenue that's in this area here into future periods to be able to push out the effects of any rate increase over a longer period of time. Okay, actually, we must have missed a slide. We did. I jumped over a slide.
Miss rate relief to recover.
Yeah, so what we are looking at with the rate stabilization plan is the average customer's bill will go up about 15%. Now, that's across all customer classes, so residential, commercial, industrial, and military. And so the bill goes up about 15%. What you see in the AM that you have is there's a table and it shows you by customer class, and none of them are 15%. It is the amalgamation of all four of those classes that average out to 15%. What we have here is an example of a current customer bill. You have the customer charge, which is that charge that we charge you just for the pleasure of being a customer. If you use no electricity, you're going to pay $6.56. You have the energy, demand and energy charge, and that is the actual usage that you use. And then you have COPA, which is the cost of power adjustment, and that recovers the fuel that is used to create that energy. What you see in the proposed rate increase is this number, the energy charge, goes up by 35% because we are asking for an increase to base rates for demand and energy of 35%. That is offset in the fuel by 18%. So when you net those out, that's where you come up with the average increase of 15%.
Do you want to ask that question at this point?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And then I've got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, on the cost of power adjustment,
Yes.
throughout the years, because I look at my bill closely every month, and there have been times that it's a negative, the cost of power adjustment. So, but lately it's always been a positive and a really high number. So can you explain that a little bit? Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
The cost of power, we set it every quarter. And what we're doing is, for that quarter, we're estimating how much fuel we're gonna use, how much purchase power we're gonna buy, and then the difference is whatever in the past we either over collected or under collected, that gets added in there too. And you add all three of those together and you project what we believe we're gonna produce kilowatt wise, and we say we need to collect 5 cents as a result of all of those things going into the mix. You get to the end of that quarter, and if any one of those 4 things were off, then you have to recalculate it, and there could be that we have over collected, and if we've over collected, that reduces the cost, and that would result potentially in a negative. If we have under collected, then that would add to it, so that would boost up the cost a little bit.
Okay. So can I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, sure.
So for the past year, I think it looks like you have not over collected, but anyway, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Well,
Chairman.
and what I will say is, just because the number is positive, doesn't mean that we haven't over collected or under collected, because remember, we are paying for fuel and we're paying for purchase power, and that difference is going to offset those two. So that number, in order for it to be negative, the over collection would have to be enough to offset all of the fuel and purchase power.
Because I get really happy when it's negative. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
I
Chairman.
have 2 more questions, Dick.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. You mentioned military rate going up. Don't we have Doyon producing electricity off the dump to provide electricity to the military?
They provide a portion of that. They provide power currently to Fort Rich. They don't necessarily provide all of Fort Rich's power. And so what they do is they offset whatever they don't sell, we do. If you look in our audited financial statements over the last 10 years, Fort Rich at one point, probably 5 or 6 years ago, they were probably our second or third largest customer. Over time, and this year was the first year, they're not in the top 10. But we do continue to sell all the power to Elmendorf.
Mr. Weddle.
Thank you.
Just a comment on phrasing, so when you say rate relief, the relief is to you, but everyone else is deferred, right?
It is a relief to us to recover the investment that was made. You're right. Because what we do is we calculate what we need to do to collect all of our costs for labor, fuel, all our operating costs, and the cost of the plant. And we look at that and we say, we compare that with what we currently collect today. And hopefully we would say, oh, we collect too much, and we would lower the rates. Historically, that hasn't been the case. We have looked at that and we say, we have a deficit, and so we need to get rate relief to adjust the rate to what it needs to be able to provide that safe, reliable power.
I got that, just the rest of the world, it's not relief.
That is true.
It's relief to you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, not a problem. So what we have done from that earlier slide is we looked at, over the 40-year life of the plant, the fuel cost savings, which was $336 million, the net power pool savings of $160 million, that water heat savings of $80 million, and the investment that we made in Plant 2A of $300. And if you look at that, customers have a net savings of $276 million over that 40-year period. What we expect is that number is low. We expect that number is actually going to increase as the top line number, the fuel savings, goes up, as well as the power pool savings goes up.
Tim? Yes. Mr. Chairman, question for you. So you're saying the net savings is $276 million, but to the people that get electricity from ML&P, they're looking at 18% rate increase. So what
15.
you're asking for?
Yeah, 15, yes.
15%, okay. Because I appreciate this, but that's not what they look at. They look at the bottom line.
No, but they will be benefited by the water heat savings. That doesn't show up on their ML&P electric bill, but it should reduce their water heating bill. Probably, in most ML&P customers' case, that'll show up as a lower N-Star bill.
So that way the water's coming out warmer.
So would they have to heat it for domestic purposes? It'll take less natural gas, or in some cases electricity, but most cases natural gas, to heat the water for the laundry, shower, dishwashing, etc.
Thank you.
Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have several questions, if you don't mind.
How many is several?
Several starts with 3. We'll see how far it goes.
You have 30 minutes left.
So, first off, have you done a similar analysis if we had, for example, channeling my inner Jennifer Johnston, installed an additional turbine at SPP as opposed to this project?
We haven't, but the cost for the turbine would be similar to the cost, because basically we bought the same thing at 2A. So the cost for the turbine would be the same as it is at 2A. SPP is efficient, it's just not as efficient as 2A. So you're going to have some of these savings. You wouldn't have all of them, because SPP, if we added another engine, would add somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, 45 megawatts, and Plant 2A is 120. And so we would need to make up that difference from something else. And you wouldn't have that $160 million from power pool savings, because Chugach, under the power pool, will be a net buyer. They will buy power from us, as will MEA.
You wouldn't have the preheat.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit argumentative on that point. So far, Chugach is overbuilt, MEA is overbuilt, and now we've overbuilt. So exactly who's going to buy this power, given that there's way more capacity within the rail belt than is necessary, and it's always cheaper to buy from generally cheaper to buy from yourself than from somebody else.
And I would respectfully disagree with you about the overbuilt. Chugach builds a 180 to 200 megawatt plant, and the bulk of their power that shows up as being overbuilt is Beluga, which they don't use because it's old and it's inefficient. The heat rate there is 14 to 15,000. The plant SPP is half that, and that's really what they use to deliver power to their customers, as well as their hydro. MEA, they are in a position that even with the plant that they built, that there will be times of the year that they would need to buy power. So I would say they're not overbuilt. With us, we, I believe, have made a prudent investment and decision to build what we did, because as I said, you've got 340 megawatts of power in the existing 8 units that we've got. A third of that's going to go away probably at the end of this year, because those units are, well, we need to shoot them and put them out of their misery. The other units that we have left are good to do peaking and then to fill in when the efficient units aren't running. But if we were going to bet our electricity and that someone flips the switch and the lights come on, I wouldn't want to do it based on the units that are left after we take out the first 4.
The likelihood is that when SPP and 2A are running at maximum capacity, that MEA's new plant will not be running very much, that Beluga, the CEA plant at Beluga, will not be running very much, and our older equipment will not be running very much. That, especially in the summer, that the core, the south central system, can be fed from the hydro facilities and the 2 new plants, SPP and Plant 2A. And that's where that big savings comes in, is by not burning the gas in the less efficient units and running them infrequently.
So as we take these older units offline, do we have any dual fuel units left?
We do. Not as many. And with 1 and 2, with retiring them, in an emergency, they would still be there. We could still use them, but we are looking at possibilities moving into the future of using LNG as the dual fuel, because we have costs associated with the dual fuel at Plant 2. The tanks need to be redone, the infrastructure needs to be redone, and that's an investment of $10, $12 million or more to put in an inefficient fuel. If you look at which we have done a study, of producing 120 megawatts with the existing generation on diesel, or using 120 megawatts, producing it with the Plant 2A, the cost differential at the low price of diesel today is between $500,000 and $1 million per day. So if you are out for any length of time, the cost gets pretty large pretty quickly. The other piece is that with our diesel tanks, we don't keep them full. Part of it is the cost to do that is significant. So we have enough diesel to be able to run currently for somewhere between 3 and 5 days.
Sometime in 2017, likely, you will be approached with a decision option for what the backup fuel for ML&P is going to be going forward. And Mark described the options. It'll either be on-site LNG storage at 2A, or it'll be refurbishment of the diesel system at Plant 2.
I suspect it won't be me being approached in 2017.
Well, there you go. The assembly will be approached. I was speaking grandly, yes, that's correct.
We'll call you anyway.
You better not.
One of the advantages to the LNG approach, and it may still be cheaper and wiser to do diesel, but there are other people that would help us pay for the LNG storage other than just us. NSTAR in particular, and potentially other gas users, would like to have some storage capacity in Anchorage for gas to be able to hedge and other things on price. So that we're not making a recommendation, but as Mark suggested, we're going to be investing, $10 to $20 million in some form of an alternate fuel system in Muldoon, starting in 2017 or 2018, and you guys will be involved in that.
And that equates to remodel or overhauling some of our diesel units once.
I'm almost done.
Okay, I've got 2 people in queue.
That's because they're excited about all the questions I'm asking.
Well-
Generating ideas.
Yeah.
So just, I want to make sure I'm clear. When you say the 160 million, I think when you were initially presenting the first version of that slide, you mentioned, you used the term our customers. I presume you mean our in the global our, as in, obviously AWU has a much larger service area than ML&P.
Well, with the 160 million, it's ML&P, Chugach, and MEA customers. Because with the pool, all 3 utilities save money as a result of it. We get paid to generate the power. Chugach, they save on not burning fuel, and so does MEA save on not burning fuel. So it's a net win for all 3 utilities, and that covers, those 3 utilities cover all of it.
And similarly for the 80 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, the one exception is with the $80 million, it's just ML&P and Chugach, because where the plant is, we can't keep the water going the other direction.
I understand it. And people on the hillside who are on well-based systems.
Eagle River is still going to have cold AWU water.
So Underwood, yeah, okay.
And then the well customers, the individual well customers and private utilities will still get what they're currently getting.
And then finally, on the rate stabilization slide, is there any precedent for this structure within RCA? Have they ever approved anything like this?
They have. Goat Lake Hydro was a rate stabilization. It has been something that's been approved by other regulatory commissions in the lower 48 numerous times. I will tell you that it is not something that they look at and every day and say, oh yes, this is just another one of those. It will be something that is unusual, but we believe that the benefit to customers make it something that they will consider and we believe approve.
So if they approve it, are we still talking a 15% increase? Or if they
Yes.
don't approve it, then it's 15% and this will be lower?
No, if they approve it, it's 15%.
If they
If
don't-
they say no, it's 25%.
In year 1.
I understand. That's why I asked the question.
No, exactly. No, and we're, so, sorry.
That's it.
That's what I wanted to elicit, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, thank you. We were talking about Chugach Electric, but they've also got wind power. Does that enter into the program at all? I mean, I know it's unreliable because it's not always blowing, but they do use it.
It does enter into it as part of the pool. Currently, they spill about somewhere between 10 and 12% of that power, which means the wind is blowing, it's producing electricity, but they don't use it in their system.
Where does
With
it
the
go?
pool,
They just put it in the pool?
with the pool, they can do that because they have difficulty in regulating all of the wind. If we're looking at phase 2, they would not be able to buy it and regulate it themselves. They just don't have the capacity. However, with the 3 utilities working together, MEA, ML&P, and Chugach, we can do that as part of the pool. And the other piece of it is we can bring in all of that and not spill any of the wind.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peterson and then Ms. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is, since we bought the natural gas out of the Cook Inlet, and you're saying our fuel cost savings are going to be 336 million, does that in that 336 number, does that include some savings that we're getting because we own the gas, or is that
No.
additional savings?
That's additional savings because let's just say, for purposes of discussion, that because we bought the Luga River, that we are always going to charge our customer $5 per MCF. So if you use 10 MCF under the existing, you pay $50. We put in new generation and it uses 30% less. So you're going to use 7 MCF at $5 is $35. And the difference between the 50 and 35 is where the $336 million comes from, because it's a lot less gas that we're using.
For the sake of this, we didn't want to, in the plant 2A conversation, for want of a better word, we didn't want to take credit for the anticipated cheaper gas that we're going to use because of our ownership of the field. Our customers are going to get the benefit of that cheaper gas whether we have plant 2A or not. So it does have a layered benefit, but that's not a 2A related change, if that makes sense. So yes, and when we approached you about, and you supported the acquisition of the additional VRU interest, that we described several $100 million of benefits to our ratepayers. That's already calculated in.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wood.
Can I do what he did?
You've got somebody else in mind?
Only if they're really good questions.
If you want to ask the same questions, I'll try and give you the same answer.
I think I kind of understand all this, but I think the phrasing is baffling, because we say it's rate relief when it's not really relief, and then we say, hey, we're saving $276 million, but we're actually paying 15 to 25% rates. And then after all this is done, would we be able to convince RCA to give us the dividend?
We will, I believe, be in a better position to do that going forward than if we didn't do this, because we will have fuel savings, so our operating costs will be reduced by the fuel savings. We will have power pool revenue that comes into us, so that will help us to build equity faster. By building equity faster, then I believe that it puts us in a better position to get the dividend back faster than if we didn't do this.
Well, if I can just, on that particular point, and the customers, they're still going to be paying the same.
Correct.
Well, absolutely. We do, at some point, we
So-
will be
so what the
approaching the
customers are paying for
RCA.
is the equity buildup that we're getting quicker.
Correct. At some point, we will be approaching the RCA to reinstate the dividend from ML&P and probably from AWWU as well. The RCA would not allow that to make a significant difference in the rate structure, and we would not be asking for that. So, and as Mark said, the RCA had denied the dividend a little over a year ago now, in part because they thought our equity versus debt structure was not where they thought it should be, or it wasn't going in the right direction. This rate change will significantly improve our debt equity ratio going forward. And so we believe that will give the RCA the improvement that they said they wanted to see before a dividend could be reinstituted.
And we can borrow additional money cheaper if our debt equity is better.
It marginally affects our financial position in a lot of different ways.
Mr. Williams, do you have another question?
I guess it just looks really, really bad. It's like everybody's happy with the ratepayer. So we're saying there's a savings, but we're charging more. So would we say if we weren't saving all this money, then you would be paying, instead of 15%, you'd be paying 25%? But it's only 15 because we're saving so much money.
Well, I guess the way that I would phrase it, and I recognize that saying that we're saving $276 million over 40 years to someone that's paying 15% more today, they say, that doesn't make any sense. But let's look at this in terms of we make the decision not to build 2A. Today, we're generating power for most of our customers with about a 12 to 14,000 heat rate, because we no longer have the ability to have the steamer running because we put it out of its misery, and so we're using inefficient units. When you look at the cost of producing power, 50% of that is fuel, so it's using more fuel. So if we did nothing, our customers' rates were going to go up. We would continually pay to rehab the units and to be able to keep them online. The reliability wouldn't be as great, and we would see a reduction in our 999s, which is how frequently we produce power and don't have outages. So we'd see an increase in the number of outages. We would see an increase in the amount of maintenance costs associated with it, and an increase in the amount of fuel that we have to use to provide the same amount of electricity. So either way, rates would go up. Over the 40 years, if we tried to do it without having 2A, rates would go up significantly more than the 15% that we're looking for. And that's assuming that we would actually be able to provide the power with the units that we've got left.
And one other thing on this point, we're talking a lot about the merits of Plant 2A, and
That ship
we
has sailed.
strongly believe them. But that ship has sailed. The decision about whether to build 2A, that was made, between 2011 and 2013. Good decision, bad decision, mediocre decision, history will judge, right? But now we're talking about how to pay for that decision that was made. I think there's maybe 5 assembly members that were around that, at least in 2013, when the decision to buy, maybe 6. Anyway, something, a significant chunk, but not obviously the entire existing assembly. Now the challenge is, how do you want to pay for that? And Mark and Anna and others have gone through great lengths to model a variety of options for doing that. We think this one is the best for both our ratepayers and has the added benefit of helping other electric utilities and other water users. But the issue is not whether rates are going to go up. It's going to be how much and when. We can talk about if we hadn't built Plant 2A, interesting hypothetical exercise, but not much use to us. I listened to the Enterprise Committee meeting, and Mr. Flynn chaired that in Ms. Johnston's absence almost 3 years ago to the day. And people were talking about, well, what happens if Watana is built? Why are we investing in this big thermal plant when we've got Susitna electricity right around the corner? Well, nobody thinks Susitna's going to get, that does not look like a very rosy probability right now. And I think we're thankful that we invested in thermal generation at that time. Because if we'd waited for Watana to look worse, we'd have been probably 2 years later in this, and we'd be burning more gas in less reliable units while we were starting 2A today instead of finishing. So I'm not, believe me, like I say, history will determine whether the last administration and the last assemblies made good choices. We're comfortable with them. We're moving forward, but that's where we are.
I have Ms. Gray Jackson, Mr. Trainee, so I'll come back to you at the end.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll put you in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm next?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a comment, a question and comments, because, I'd like to be prepared when I get emails, so I can respond to my constituents. So I'm sure you can't tell me now, but can you tell us, Dick and I, how many of our constituents in District 4 have ML&P? Because I know some don't. Dick doesn't in his area, so if you could just send us an email and let us know. Okay. And my comment is this: when I think about or hear rate increase and reliability, all I can think about is the windstorm and the electricity that went out in my house for 3 days and longer in other places. And I don't want to see that happen again, ever. Nobody likes increases, period, point blank, but nobody likes blackouts either. So my opinion is if this increase guarantees reliability on a personal note and other than on fixed income, like a lot of other people, I'm ready and willing to pay, and I hope that I can explain to my constituents the reason why this is happening. As a matter of fact, my cable bill is more than this increase is going to be, and I don't even have any roof challenge. But anyway, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Trainee.
I could think of a whole lot of things to say. I'm going to.
Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just administration. So many times you talk about the RCA. You're not responsible to anybody. So as we deal with the RCA, would you guys at least take a look at contingency plans? So where do we go if we don't like their decision? We challenge them in court. I want it laid out so we know we have to when it comes to the assembly. Because quite frankly, I'm not comfortable with being beholden to the RCA. Because they're not responsible to anybody. We are. We have constituents that are going to call us. They don't call the RCA. So I just want to make sure we've got contingency plans to deal with the RCA.
We do.
I know, but I want to see it in writing, Mr. Mayor. I want to know exactly what it is, sir.
It's not gonna work like that. You can't put those contingencies down in writing. They're political plans.
No, but you can tell us we have a choice of filing suit, we can take it to Superior Court. I just want to know
Or
exactly.
you can get legislation passed that exempts us from RCA jurisdiction.
Anyway,
Let me go to Mr.
Thank you,
Wells.
Mr.
Can I go to there? Mr. Mayor, go ahead. You have the floor. Is that it?
I just wanna say this. I mean, we bought, whether you like it or not, we bought this plan.
We got it.
We have to pay for it, okay? And I will be real clear, and I've been clear, it would not have been my choice to pursue this course of action. But we don't get to retroactively go back and revisit that. This is a purchase that the municipality, ML&P made, we've got to pay for it. And that is really the challenge in front of us. And I think the way that this presentation has proceeded explains the benefits that 2A has offered. It outlines some of the benefits, material benefits that have accrued to and will accrue. But we can't go back and change decisions that were already made.
Are you responding to
Let me
something?
respond to him. As one of the assembly members who made the decision to do 2A, I've got no problem with it. I'm not justifying it. We needed a new generation system, which 2A gives us. When you take a look at the amount of gas this one used versus the old system, heavens, yes, we need this new one. We don't, it's like you buy a new car, you don't want to have to pay for it, we're going to have to pay for this. And that includes rate increase to make it happen, so it's just the cost of doing business. Thank you.
Mr.
guys.
West.
I just want to say, I understand that we bought it, we can't remove that. But I think the phrasing here is important because we will get asked, and I like to have a way to phrase it in a community council meeting so everyone understands it. So your answers help out quite a bit.
Well, and if you, I would offer that if you are going to be at a community council meeting, let me know, and we will make sure that somebody is there so that if they're throwing something, they'll throw it at us and not at you.
Oh, you never know. Well, I don't mind, they can throw it at me, I just want to be ready for it.
But-
So at your community council meetings, John, they're gonna love this. They're not gonna pay, I mean,
They're not gonna
unless
pay
they
for
own
yours.
property north of Tudor, they're not gonna pay for it. And Chugach customers, I mean, regardless of the rate piece, they're gonna get benefits from the power pooling associated with this. And you have a lot of AWU customers as well. And they're gonna have warmer, water in their deal. So, I think most of Anchorage will see a benefit from this. It'll vary a little bit based on who provides your power and how you get your water.
They will simply see a headline in their government.
There's that too.
I don't see a problem of paying for the plant in terms of an increased rate to pay for the plant. What I have a concern with is paying down at a faster rate than normal the reduction of our debt by the current ratepayers having to pay that down. And it just seems to me, if we're paying for the power, that's one thing, and the cost of the plant, so on and so forth. But it's paying down it's increasing our equity by paying it down at a faster rate than.
Well, and if I may, we have put together an equity management plan. It's an update to one that has been out there for some time. We will be bringing that to the assembly, and it's going to talk about how we manage the utility, being fiscally responsible, looking at, what is that right mix between debt and equity, and taking advantage of opportunities with public finance to pay down some of that debt, to be able to reduce the overall cost to our customers. We're looking at all of those options, and one of the things that I have been working with my management team on is that we are looking not to borrow any money for the next 3 to 5 years. We are looking not to go out and ask for another rate increase for 3 years, possibly 5 years, because costs go up that don't have anything to do with plants, healthcare, employees, those costs go up. So we're looking to be as fiscally responsible as possible to potentially, there may come a day when we come to the RCA and we ask them to reduce our rates. I would love to be the one who gets to come and say that and come before you and ask to do that. And I think that if we are if we are focused on the operations of the utility, we are focused on working together with our neighbors through the power pool and other things. We are looking for those opportunities to save money, paying off debt where we can, that we're going to be in that position to have the lowest rates again in the rail belt.
I don't have a problem with paying off a debt, but it's just the speed with which, and the only rationale for doing that above and beyond what our normal costs are is it would be if we anticipate a big expense coming down the pipe that we have to have a credit for.
Well, but remember, debt service for us as a result of this is going to go up by a significant amount, and any that we can reduce our debt, it reduces the debt service, and that then puts us in a position to have lower rates.
I have 4 minutes, Mr. Flynn.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Steele's speaking of is sort of the tension between improving our equity position more quickly, which is good for the municipality as a whole, given it might improve our likelihood for dividends, but not necessarily so good for the ratepayers. So there's a tension. But specifically to the equity plan that you said you're going to bring forward, I presume that will incorporate the equity that we acquire as part of our RCA mandate to set monies aside associated with BRU sales, which is how we help finance the purchase of additional unit.
That does increase our equity, yes, if we
But
make
that'll be
gas
part of
sales.
the equity plan, so we see how that's reflected in the overall structure.
Any gas sales that we make does increase our equity. We are working on a number of opportunities, but at this point, we're not selling much in the way of gas to other people because we're using it all ourselves.
So our equity plan at this point, in the near term anyway, does not anticipate a lot of additional equity from gas sales because, as Mark said, we're selling most, or excuse me, we're burning most of what we're producing. That could change over time, and certainly when 2A comes online, you know, life could get better. But in the near term, we don't expect that to change significantly.
It'd be good to see that historical data, you know, how it built over the 20-some years prior to using those dollars, and then some sort of projection moving forward when you bring that forward, the equity plan to us.
We can do that, yes.
I would suspect the argument you're making to RCA to pay down this rate structure at a more rapid rate would be favorable in their eyes, as opposed to saying, hey, we're gonna keep this debt below the price.
Well, let me be
Just
clear.
because they don't particularly like us to have debt, I mean, the ratio.
Right, but let me be clear. We're not making an argument to the RCA that we're gonna pay down debt faster. What we're
No.
doing is saying that by prudent utility management and focusing on our operations and the things that we buy and the things that we finance, that we will be in a position to be fiscally responsible, but also financially stable. And as a result of those things, it could give us the ability to pay down debt faster. And that would be one thing, and that is in the equity management plan. That's one opportunity for us, is to be able to do that. One of the other opportunities, as I said, not issuing debt, is to look at financing capital expenditures, capital investments in the system, because we still have a lot of the system that needs to be fixed, by internally generated funds, so that we're not going out and borrowing money and increasing the cost for our customers.
Fine, let the record show Mr. Dunbar has joined us. Other questions before I either call it or extend it? We've got 1 minute.
I recommend adjourning.
Any last words?
Well, I would just like to say thank you for coming out before Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, if, depending on the preference of the body, we are available for further conversations of small and large groups. So we'll be working with the chair.
Mr. Chairman, if we need to have a schedule of a work session, Mr. Trainer, I'll make sure that happens, okay?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Can't stress enough how important it is that we get action on the 20th.
All right, for the good of the order, meetings 4.